Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. We have an OG homie from literally, was it fourth grade?
Kindergarten.
Was it kindergarten?
Remember the picture of us? You had your nice Sally Jesse Raphael glasses on.
No, I didn't have glasses yet then.
No.
But I think I had like bangs and I was like looking at the floor and you were like looking at the back or something. Yeah, which is still the same look you do, which is perfect. I'm gonna have to dig that out for this post.
Yes, yes.
But literally known each other forever. So kindergarten, so elementary school, middle school, high school, we played lacrosse together. Did you play field hockey?
No.
I didn't think so. It's all a blur. Someone had a stick. But today, I'm gonna let Jessica do her intro as I always do for everybody, but I like to do a lot of podcasts or conversations around stuff that's coming up anyways. So instead of like seeking out topics, which some of those I do, just stuff I want to talk about, when it keeps coming up in conversation, I kind of know like, okay, that's like something we should talk about on Turmeric and Tequila and like dig into it. So, you know, as we're in a social world and we're in a fitness and health and lifestyle world, but amongst all these things is the question of alcohol, to drink or not to drink. That's really what William Shakespeare was wondering. To be or not to be, in case I lost anyone. Anyways, and now it's kind of at this, it's like, you know, the turmeric and tequila, the whole base of it is like balance. You don't have to cut out any one thing or have you to monitoring yourself and keeping things in alignment. However, with alcohol, and this is what we're going to kind of unpack today, you know, the cause and effects, what it really costs, is it really worth it because it is an important piece of society, all of the above, because it is such a relevant piece of our world, and it's starting, I think, even younger and younger, so we're going to wrap on all that. But before we do, Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're getting into now. She just recently started a company. Go ahead and put that on blast if you so wish to.
Well, first, happy New Year's Eve.
Oh, yes.
So very apropos.
Yes.
Having this conversation on a night when people are maybe imbibing a little bit more.
And we'll cheers too.
Yes, yes.
To 2020, man.
Woohoo, a new decade.
Here we are.
God bless.
Yes.
Yeah, so
serendipitous.
Yeah, Jess Crow, known you forever and ever.
Facts.
I'm what am I? A human being starting there. That's a good place.
I think we are.
I'm professional front. Yeah, I just started a company called Apogee. www.apogee.biz. APOGY. Yeah, not like APOGE. APOGY. Yeah.
APOGY. Got
Yep. It's an online training company. So this podcast all about disruption in an elegant way, right? What's the
graceful disruption?
Graceful disruption, right? I'm trying to disrupt the higher education, professional development space, providing online training for people who want to up-level their skill set in the workplace and also help bridge that gap between being a human doing and being a human being. So a little bit more mindful. And started that in September.
Yeah. How long were you in the corporate world?
Over 15 years. Okay. So like right out the gate.
Stem from really authentic space.
Yeah. A lot of aggressive corporate ladder climbing. And then just realized this is no longer the right place for me to continue to learn and grow and serve. And part of that actually stems from, I'm also a yoga teacher. I started teaching this year, and that was one sort of, I don't want to say nail in the coffin, but maybe it was for my corporate career, where I realized, you know, this is no longer kind of my people. My people is maybe more in this space. So have my own business, teach yoga on the professional front. And then on a personal front, I'm a wife of 12 years, been with my husband for...
Congrats on that. I said 12 years?
Married, yeah, we've been together for like 18 years.
What?
Me and Trevor, yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Have we been out of college that long?
Like 17, I guess.
Oh,
actually. 17,
seriously?
so I'm a year off, yeah.
That's like a whole human, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for reinforcing how old we are.
Hashtag Botox, okay. I'm here for it. Okay.
Keeps us young.
Yeah.
So we've had that, and then I've got 2 kiddos. I've got an 8-year-old, and then I've also got a little man who's 5, and
sweeties.
Adopted him through the foster system. So we've been foster parents, had a whole journey with that and infertility and all sorts of fun stuff. But what I love about, you know, kind of where we're at is that I feel very much like everything has sort of unfolded for a reason, and I'm where I'm supposed to be, and my family's where it's supposed to be. So yeah, that's my bio, my quick and dirty.
Love. Well, I really love right off the bat that it's, I mean, you genuinely have have had this really authentic balance of like super work experience and then super life experience. Like I mean, we are older, but like you guys went through some stuff. I mean, the fertility and like adoption and all that's a lot. That's like, and that's your personal world alongside a really, you know, intense, demanding, corporate situation. So that in itself will, you know, wear you down or make you stronger. And I think it was, you know, again, like really good experience. So I love having these conversations when, you know, people like you can sit to the table and be like, I've actually been on both sides.
Been there, done that.
Here's where we've been, and here's my helmet in case you need it.
Definitely builds empathy for, I mean, honestly, I do think it does. I think going through really rough stuff helps create an awareness and space for understanding for other people who are going through those things, which is why I was excited to talk and am excited to talk to you about, you know, today, alcohol and kind of that balance that we, you know, struggle with or maybe don't struggle with, but how it's so prevalent in society and the impact it has on reducing stress, which was kind of I think the big thing over the past. If I could mark my 30s, I think stress was sort of a common theme, and for many people it is. Yeah,
well, it absolutely is. And I think, you know, our young people have gotten better about understanding like self-care and what you need to do, even if it's like stepping away or meditating or massages. We didn't grow up with that, or at least I didn't, you know, of that mindset. Even as athletes, it was never like, the training room is where you go when you're injured. It's not like you go there for a recovery ice bath or maintenance or anything like that. Like it was never that mindset now. And actually I have a lacrosse friend that's starting a mindset business for high school students. And I think he's getting out of the corporate situation. He's actually a teacher. And they're like cutting his salary, but so he's like venturing on his own. But I think his timing's perfect because now it's relevant in that younger space. Thank goodness, because the theme of all my podcasts, regardless of what it is, it's kind of gone back to like self-care, self-awareness, and like discovering who you are. Even when you said like I was in the corporate world and I figured out these aren't my people, well, they probably really never were. You just didn't know it yet. And so many times in my life where I'm like, no wonder I didn't feel like I really fit in, because that's not really your tribe. And like, you don't actually want to be doing that, and you're out of alignment with core values and so many other things. Like, no wonder it didn't fit. Oh, but we like the same sport. Okay.
Well, I think there's lessons to be learned. Like, it definitely met a need that needed to be fulfilled for a long time. Like, I had a lot of ambition, and I knew what I wanted certain things, and I think that worked until I sort of hit all my goals, and then I lost my sense of purpose. I was like, okay, well, now what? Yeah. It's just more of the same, and kind of when is enough? So that's when, and I think it was in that point too where I realized, okay, I can just keep making money to buy more things, and that doesn't seem like a very fulfilling life.
Well, it is when you're younger. Yeah, when fills your cup until it doesn't, and it's like, okay, well, I have a closet full of shit I don't know what to do with. Right. And then at that point, you're like, okay, so, but it's hard to walk away from, you know, I was actually nervous for the introduction because I kind of hate that, like, who are you, what do you do? And I'm like, you know, I hate putting labels on who I am based on what I've accomplished or what I've done. Yeah. And I think that creates space for, you know, it made it hard for me to leave the corporate space because I put so much of my identity into being a successful professional that when I decided to walk away, I was like, well, what am I now? You know, well, I'm just a mom, or I'm just this, which is just which are all huge hats to wear. Right, yeah. But I mean, you see that in, you know, with the pro athletes, even college athletes when they retire, it does get wrapped so much into your identity, and that's why I love these conversations. So while they're in it, they can have some awareness of like, okay, I'm going to be done with this at some point. I'm not going to go to the NFL, or I'm going to graduate and be a doctor, or a parent, or a corporate, whatever. And you can have some awareness of like, you start to let go earlier on, or have some balance in that thought process. Again, this was just new conversation for us. But that tie to like our identity, I think in our society, that's what you do. You figure out your identifying factors and then you cling to them like nothing else. Yeah. And that's it. And then when you take it away, of course, all hell breaks loose. Right. Because then you don't know who you are. Right. And then you just spend a lot of money to figure that out. Yeah, a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching. All the card readers. A lot of clothes, not yes. Well, so on that note, and I think all of this kind of stems back to, before we were recording, we talked about how, you know, the 5 people in your world are the most impacting, or your immediate environment. And no matter how strong of a human you are or how much work you've done, if you stay in something long enough, it really does chip away and you start to lose grasp on who you really are. Right. And I think, and we said this, you know, anything in excess is, you know, poison. Fitness, counting carbs, dieting, you know, anything that might look healthy on paper, and it gets to that too much factor, it becomes detrimental. It's like positive and negative addictions. If it's an addiction, it's an addiction. Right. And if it's, that's not a good thing in any case. So. Right. Well, I think it's just, you know, constant like cost benefit analysis, which sounds a little formal, but really just checking in and being like, okay, how do I actually feel about this? And I think that's where we come in with alcohol. Jess and I are very good at spring break. So, that's, what it is. Cheers, here. I really do, genuinely do enjoy tequila, hence I named the entire show after it. And the whole point is like the turmeric and tequila, the balance, because figuring out this balance, in training and competing, there was times where, we didn't drink or we didn't, go out or do anything. It was all about like waking up and feeling like 100%, being able to train and then max out 100%. And it wasn't hard not to drink. That being said, I always felt like I was missing out. And it wasn't like I can't get wasted tonight. It's like I can't have a glass of wine at dinner. And then it's just, I'm not good with limitations in general. Like most time I would like, I don't drink during the week now at all anyways. Yeah. But knowing that I couldn't or there was some limitation there, it wouldn't bode well for me. But the second you take it away, I think you notice how much it's everywhere. Yeah. And all the time. Have you ever like abstained from alcohol?
Yeah. When I went through my yoga teacher training, actually, I did a sober October that sort of carried into November. So I did 2 months of not drinking, and when I stopped going out with people, there was this like, oh, you're gonna, like don't judge us for drinking because you're not, and that was something that kind of came up, but it's everywhere, and there's almost like this stigma if you're not drinking, like why, like what's your motivation for not doing that, and
I think people assume
problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say they assume like you gotta hit like rock bottom. It's like, well, no, maybe I just don't want the carbs, which I would never say that, but it's I don't want the carbs, or I don't want to. I'm cutting out whatever, or I'm doing the Whole30, or I have an event, or I've got to drive my kids, whatever. Yeah. But people always do assume like, oh, were you an alcoholic?
Yes.
Yes.
Like, well, no. Like, no, I'm doing a lot of yoga all the time.
I wear tight pants all the time. We got to keep this, what I'm saying.
It's real. But it's funny though, and so I've got people in my life too that have decided to stop drinking, either abstain or just take pauses here and there. But there is this stigma around if you stop, then something happened that led to you making that decision that's negative versus just making a decision to be healthy or because you've got things that you want to get done, and drinking doesn't support you getting stuff accomplished.
Right. Well, and have you ever abstained? I think we didn't drink for, I don't know, well, in college we didn't drink during the week at all because we had training and practice. It was not even a thing.
It was definitely not my college experience.
Yeah, I know. Most people say, they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I swear. Maybe that's why I'm still raging now. But like, we literally couldn't do it. And like our coach, you're just too miserable when you have to wake up, which wasn't worth it. Yeah. So when you have that like accountability factor that's going to like smoke the shit out of you, like it's painful when you try and play on both sides. Yeah. And I definitely pushed the line. But taking that time off, I think you really start to learn and see like the appreciation and admiration you have for people that really stick to it, and they're like, no, I actually just really don't want to do this, addiction or not, and all the more championing if it was an addiction situation, because it's that much harder knowing not only that you don't want to do it anymore. Again, it's everywhere in life, and it's socially acceptable to do it at all times, even if you're gonna drive home, even if you're going to a wedding or a baby shower or whatever situation it might seem like it might not be socially acceptable, it pretty much is. So abstaining and being in that environment all the time it's kind of crazy. And I don't think you really realize how hard that is until you try and take a breather.
Take time off.
Yeah, and recognize, how relevant it is in our world. And not only just like drinking for fun, but culturally, like wine at church or like, religiously. Communion. Yeah. God knows what's up. Yeah. Do they have that now?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I was Catholic, but no longer.
The kids don't drink wine, right?
No, they no. I actually don't remember. I haven't been in a Catholic church for a really long time. The church that we go to now, they don't even serve communion anymore. They used to have grape juice and like gluten-free bread. Very much.
Oh my God! Yes, Stapleton. I see you. Okay.
I think they're trying to serve. Help everybody out.
I'm with it.
No, yeah. I think there is a growing. I think there's more people that would probably abstain if it. Well, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to drink, but it's so much around them that they almost feel like, okay, if I don't, then that's, then I'm going to miss out on something. Or it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's almost glamorized to some degree. And so not drinking can be really hard.
Yeah. Well, I think it came up a lot in our conversations and other conversations I was having where we were talking about like, dang, like I want to feel good for yoga, or I want to feel good for CrossFit training, or just waking up, it impacts, like I can tell my creativity. Although like one like gin drink, like, and I can write, like I'm creative. Anything beyond that, it's kind of like, okay, I just think it's good and it's not actually.
Yeah.
But so there's like that window.
Yeah.
But in otherwise, like I think it's something kind of I struggle with, because I love having a drink or two. I love the socialization around it. I love the way it's community or celebratory, and even if it's like a champagne glass or a drink, you know, on New Year's Eve, you know, I'm down with that, and I'm okay with like moderation. Usually I'm like, all right, if we're going in, like I like to dance party and like we're gonna turn up, but having that balance is awesome. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, for a couple drinks, does it really matter?
Yeah.
Like, do you really care that much? Well, no. And I don't know. It's kind of this continuous like conversation of like, well, if it costs money, it costs alcohol or calories. It costs, you know, so many other. It could cost relationships or, you know, legal issues. Like there's so many angles. Like when you really do again that cost benefit analysis, it's like, well, is it really worth it?
I think it's a balance piece though that people struggle with. Like having 1 or 2 glasses is you know, not kind of going above and beyond where you should be. But I don't think that's how our culture drinks. I think most of us learned how to drink alcohol maybe in high school. For me, it was definitely college. Like the year we graduated, we were the #1 party school in America.
Oh, that's right.
Puffs.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, I think American culture just has not quite figured out how to drink. Conservatively, or how to drink in moderation. I think there's lots of people who do know how to do that. I think there's lots of people who don't drink. I think there's lots of people who can mindfully consume alcohol, but there's definitely this undercurrent of consuming alcohol in excess. Like binge drinking is very common, and not just like going out and getting thunder drunk or whatever, you know.
But I never even heard that. That will reuse it. Okay, so thunder
I
drunk.
know that happens, but I think people, you know, if you're drinking multiple drinks, more than 2, right? You're kind of going in that direction, and it is so common. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where you can drink at the pools, and
oh,
in
really?
Summertime,
Oh, I didn't know that.
I had an article in the local newspaper like, parents, please stop drinking so much at the pools because the high schoolers who are watching your kids are sick of, you know, you not being watching your own kids.
Wait, do they all drive home though? I mean, I know you guys are all close,
everybody
but
rides their bikes. I mean, you
okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
I mean, hopefully people aren't driving, but I just think having, you know, there's just it's very acceptable to consume lots of drinks regardless of your age. You know, I just think that's just kind of how culturally. It's
I'm
not
surprised
uncommon.
they did that. Do you think it would be better if like they had a rule like no drinking but like didn't enforce it, so there was like less people that did it but like they still kind of did it on the sly? Because my family would have.
No, it feels like prohibition to me.
So you think it's better that it's like free reign, go with it?
Yeah, because then you almost like see it and you can kind of, you know, be present to it and you know, like help each other out, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it shouldn't be allowed. I don't know.
I bet you it's, I would think honestly,
out.
I mean, guessing, I would bet it's probably pretty much the same. Like if they're gonna drink, they're gonna drink. If it's not enforced, if it was like hard to
put it in like a water bottle or something.
I mean, again, that's how we grew up. Like whatever. It was like my parents were never getting super lit. I don't know. But like it was kind of always a thing, and then other parents always did, but it wasn't like don't drink at our soccer games or don't do this. But I don't know. Actually, was it we played on the same soccer team?
We did, yeah.
Like over 8,000
high school. Probably it was middle school because
middle school still.
Middle school, yeah.
Okay.
But see, that's the thing though. People weren't drinking at soccer games back in the day. Like my parents.
I don't think my parents were.
You know, it's the weekend. People are packing Trulies and White Claws and heading to their kids' games. Like it's just very, and that's just for adults. But I would imagine even younger, like it's, you know.
There's actually a lot to unpack there.
Dude,
I know. I can't even get into that. I really can't. Like, I'd rather just hit a flask a couple times and drink 2 big old Trulies.
I like them.
I know most people do, but I don't do sweet very much. Like this is like we're drinking tequila sodas, my famous very low cal margarita. It's just too sweet for me. But I will say this: I think they're drinking at young sport youth games. I think that's more of a conversation. It's gotten so crazy and so competitive, and parents are losing their own lives and their own personal interests, so it's getting entirely invested in the kids. That's a whole other podcast. But that in itself would absolutely drive me to drink, because it's like, okay, here comes Mr. Smith again. You know, he's never played a sport in his life, but he's going to give us a full dissertation on what the kicker should do and how the fullbacks lean back and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay. Because even as a coach, I was like, okay, sir, you never played women's lacrosse, so let's just breathe. And it was a whole thing. So
well, they started this thing. So with my kids' soccer, they're like, please be quiet. Like they have this whole entire mantra for families now, mantra for parents, where it's like, don't talk, don't even cheer. I'm kidding. It's not that intense.
Wow.
But it's like, don't coach your kids from the sidelines and have a good attitude. And they're talking about the parents because.
Is it working? That's actually really good.
I think so. I think people. Again, this was the first year that I experienced it with my oldest being in kind of a rec plus, and they're select as well for certain soccer. Yeah, parents get intense and very competitive, and they're living vicariously through their 8-year-olds.
Yeah, they gotta take a turn. We'll go back to the alcohol conversation, but I literally started one of my mini IGs, compete honorably, which was literally no business agenda, not sitting there to be monetized or sold or whatever. But it was a pledge where it's like, I'm not gonna monitor you. And this again when I was coaching Grandview High School, women's varsity lacrosse. It wasn't about like the rules and regulations, which are all necessary and I'm completely a fan of. But it was like this like self accountability. I'm like, there's no conversation around like, okay, I'm telling you not to do this, but also you look like an asshole, and like this isn't
So
becoming
was it for the parents or
this is for anyone, like any athletes I got to revamp it, and it was literally just a pledge you sign online, and everyone could see who did or didn't sign it, and there was no stipulations or sponsors, and it was purely like, I'm reading this, I pledge to compete honorably, I'm minding my own behavior because it's a representation of me, myself, my team, my country, whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, we're responsible for ourselves. Like even if you get in trouble or you get called out on the play or whatever, you still look like an asshole. And it's not if it hurts another player or it's almost kind of like drinking. Like it's just not worth it if you're too much. So be mindful of yourself. Stop waiting for the ref to control you or a parent or anything else. Pull back. Or I had parents sign it too, saying like, okay, we're gonna support our kids in this, and then we're gonna be competitive and honorable on the sidelines, but in the right graceful way. I think God, this was 10 years ago, and I think there was like 200 people that had signed up, and this was before social media, really before anything. And all I really cared about was that my Grandview team got it and my parents got it, so we could negate some of those conversations. And I think it worked, even if it just planted a seed of awareness. That's all I really wanted. Right. Like if someone's gonna be an a-hole, which I did have a couple, for the most part everyone was pretty darn awesome. It was there. It's like, I'm paying attention. I'm telling you, I'm doing this, what's going on as a coach. I'm planting this seed in your mind. If you can even be slightly aware, that's all that I can ask. Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is it reminded me a lot of like the culture building that happens in a corporate environment, right? Like you try to manufacture to some degree the experience that you want your employees to have, and it works. It works for a long time. It works more for some and less for others, depending on how bought in you are to whatever it is you're trying to create, develop, sustain. But as I was thinking about the last kind of corporate experience that I had, where it was really strong in the beginning, but as the years went on, it sort of, people were like, lip service, I'm just gonna check the box, do the attestment, but I really I don't give a shit.
Well, I think that's nature though. I think over time you drink the Kool-Aid hard, then you start to see some truths around things, and you start to get to know yourself better. And again, it may or may not have been my people. I've evolved from this, they've evolved from me. Whatever, like things just take their course. And I do think impact loses its, place in your head over time, no matter what it is.
When it becomes second nature, that you almost like a reinvestment in whatever it is.
Right. And that's why I think you got to keep kind of like evolving, keeping things fresh, or going to the next challenge, or having that check-in of like, oh my God, this used to scare the crap out of me, and now I don't even care. I remember George Mason, humans are listening to this at some point. By my 5th year, so because I tore my ACL, so I had a red shirt. So 5th year, 4 years of college is standard. I had 5. It was long, man, because I had that 5th year of eligibility, and I actually could have graduated. I remember my coach yelled at me, and she was like, we would it was the shrill of your body would freeze when you were in trouble. It's like, did you forget your jersey? We would stay up stay up at night for 6 a.m. runs because we thought we were gonna die the next day. It was a lot of mental training. But what's that?
Oh my.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. I thought you said why. I was like, oh, there's no real way of knowing. By my 5th year, she's like, oh, listen, why are you going over the line? And I was like, I couldn't hear. I don't know. She's like, 500 push-ups. I was like, cool. I don't even care. It's not that I didn't care, but I was just like, whatevs, man. I've been here way past 6. Yeah, totally. I was like, okay, and I think even at that point they knew they were just like, cool, bitch, graduate, like, be done, let it go. But I think you're like, and the less and less emotional tie you get to it, and you can probably say this with alcohol.
Yeah.
But I think the easier it is to just be like,
Whatever.
moving on from here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so minor segue. You know, as you are navigating, you know, career switch, being a mom, doing these things, lifestyle comes into it. So it's like not even like, tell me if this is relatable to you. Not only do you, maybe it's not about alcohol, but it's like there's so much going on. I have so much to do. How much does alcohol really fit into this picture, regardless if I want to drink or not, because it makes me tired, or it's one extra step when you're already like super, super busy as a human? How do you navigate that conversation? How's that impacted your world?
I mean, I think it's, and I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but for me in particular, I will consume like a glass of wine or two if I've done everything that I need to do for the day. So if I've worked out, if I've gotten work done, if I've, you know, check all the boxes, then it's almost like, okay, I can unwind and I can have a glass of wine, I can have a glass or two, just read a book or watch, I don't really watch TV, so it's usually like read a book or.
Not even The Bachelor? It's really good for your brain.
TV watcher, no. Like, there's certain
Stick to the
series-
alcohol.
Yeah, I know. There's like I might watch a series if someone tells me it's good, and then I'll binge watch it. I kind of do that with books too. I get a good book, and then I want to stay up all night reading it. So I try not to do either because I know.
So what do you do at night then?
You know, it's been an evolution. In the past, I was working at night, so I wasn't drinking because I was doing, you know, work for my job. Now, what the heck do I do at night? I don't know.
Have a glass of wine, good night, moon.
I mean, some nights I'll do that, yeah. And I would, you know, other nights I'm like working on other stuff. I don't even know. I go to bed pretty early these days because I'm old as,
Well, but again, it's kind of same conversation, not really about alcohol, but like now I need to like be up earlier. Like, cause I'm usually a night owl. Like I would rather stay up late, get stuff done, sleep till like 9:30ish, depending, or if I wasn't working out early. And just like let my body sleep because that's kind of what I feel like I recovered my best. But now when I have to be up early, it's like, okay, I need to get to bed earlier. It's like that routine, not even that I really have a routine, but like I start kind of that thought process, or at least I try to, and come 2020, that's the goal. To get to bed earlier. It's like, again, take care of all these boxes. I don't even know if it's getting older, but when you really start to like be involved with a lot,
you're responsible. I found, so this summer this fall I ran my first half marathon. And when I was training, I knew that if I had one drink, just one, I would be less fast, my pace would be slower, I'd feel not great. And so having more stuff, plus parenting, plus work, plus all those things, it made drinking less appealing. But again, when I wasn't training for a marathon or I didn't have stuff to do, it's a lot easier to be like, oh, I just want to hang out. Okay, it's, you know, it's easy to have a glass of wine, or I'm going to have a beer, whatever people consume. But for me, that's when I would drink. It was when I've done everything I need to do. It's late at night, not late at night, you know, it's 8 p.m. And like, what am I going to do? Sure, why not? Like, tea's fun, but not as fun as having a glass of wine.
I have a tea aficionado, like detox tea, like make the big tea leaves. Anyways, I'll say that for another day. It's very, very exciting. I do think that's actually really good advice if you are trying to like step back or weave it out of your life a little bit, is commit to something bigger. Anything physical, dude, you will notice. And I would probably have a glass of wine here and there, but I've learned with wine, this is why I love tequila so much, my body does really like process it well. Wine, I don't sleep.
Different alcohols will, like I wouldn't drink, I rarely drink hard alcohol at home just because, I don't know, like tequila's wonderful, but
it's a lot.
No, it's just for me, like I would have a glass of wine at home, but I wouldn't have wine if I'm going out, which I rarely do, but you know, like, there's different alcohols for different situations, I think.
I completely agree with that.
I didn't realize that in my 20s and my, you know, early 30s, I was like, you know, drink whatever, because people, but you go out more, you know, you're more apt to go out and have a good time with your friends.
I did once upon a time. Now I've been pulling back because I'm effing tired. And I do care about, like, I've leaned so much into, like, the creative stuff.
Your body's more resilient when you're young, though, too. You can bounce back if you can do the drinking thing. And then hit it hard the next day versus now you're like,
Well, but again, I thought through this, and, like, I do think as the older you get, the harder it gets. Fine. But I think as you get older, you really lean into like feeling good and knowing what feeling good feels like. So I think you're pickier about feeling like shit. Where you're young, you're like, I feel great. I just, you know, drank all night, crushed the Taco Bell Nacho Supreme and drank a Gatorade. Let's go run a marathon. But really, you probably feel like shit. You just don't know it. So,
well, I think the older you get too, though, maybe it's you want to feel better all the time, but there are definitely, I think stress management is handled differently by different people.
Yeah.
And that, we're talking about having a glass of wine or two at night. I don't know, I haven't looked up the numbers, but what if you go beyond that? And people are just so used to living in a default of stress or whatever, that feeling bad is their normal. And so I think that's also an issue for a lot of people where, there's that fine line of moderation versus not, and then that creates space for kind of some of the issues that surface where maybe they shouldn't be drinking at all, or but then, it comes back to that conversation we were having earlier where you decide to make a change, it's an abrupt change, you're not drinking, and people are like, oh, what happened to you?
What's up? The stigma. But again, I think that goes with anything, like mental health and wellness, or any decision that's really outside of status quo. Someone's going to think something about you. So I think step one of that is kind of being ready to be judged in some way. But newsflash, we're all getting judged in some capacity somewhere.
Right. I'm judging you right now.
I hope so. I mean, well, take a look around, ladies and gents. We can barely see you. I'm gonna have to adjust this. Hang on. Sorry, we got a little. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, I wonder if this is on. This is Pivo.
What's Pivo?
It's a thing that follows you. Anyways, sorry for video, and this will come out at some point, probably in 2030 when I figure out YouTube. But we're young here. I think it is us going back to, like, again, being able to be judged, getting back to, like, secure space, knowing who you are, and then being able to make decisions. And I say this all very casually, like, it's very easy. It's not. But alcohol or fitness or, again, any decision that's outside of that status quo is where I think you're going to get thrown for a loop. But on the flip side, which I want to get into next, I think it's a major question of control.
Right.
And it's, type A personality. I consider myself type A-ish on certain things and then totally not on others.
Same.
Yeah. And I think most people are a mix of things. The thing that always gets me, whether it's alcohol or fitness or what have you, again, boundaries and a fence up in my world, or being on a leash, or like having, rules to the game are not good with me. So I know that if alcohol or CrossFit or fitness or whatever is taking over, that's always a good checkpoint for me, where it's like, okay, it's not really about drinking or celebrating or training. It's like, this is actually running my life now. And if that happens in any piece of anyone's world, even if it's not like to, the degree of like alcoholism, or like we're super far to one side, it's just like, well, I'm tired and I didn't get work done. It's because we were partied all last night. Or I trained for 8 hours and now I can't get work done because I trained so hard yesterday. That piece of control that's there, I think, is a really good balance point for me personally, because I can't stand for something to control me where it's almost like outside of my decision making then. And then that just messes with every other angle of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that kind of factor into your relationship with things? Alcohol, fitness, training, job, family?
I mean, there was definitely a time where work was what I prioritized over everything. And I didn't want to, but that was, sort of the beginning of the end, when I'd be at home with my family, with my kids, and in the back of my head I'm running through all the things I got to do at work and what I need to do to continue to get ahead. And so I'm with you. I think any sort of, and I'll use the word addiction, but any sort of overinvestment of yourself where it's like this relentless pursuit of something, or this relentless like focus on something that doesn't serve you is an issue. And so pulling back from that, like you can say have moderation in this, that, or the other. It's hard when you're in it. And for me, I think it was work for a long time, because I saw what it took to get ahead. I saw other people advancing by doing lots and lots of work and overextending themselves, and I was like, I want what they have, but what I didn't realize is I didn't really want what they had.
Well, not to give up everything. I don't think
that was the aha. I was like, no, actually, I don't want this at all. I want to be present for my kids. I want to be able to do other things. And so, I think it's really easy to, overcommit yourself to something and not even realize you're doing it because of the environment that you're in. Like, I was in an environment where, working tons of hours was the norm. It wasn't unnatural. It was what you did to advance.
And if everybody around you is doing
everybody's doing it,
you're normal.
And then you start to develop behaviors that align with what's happening in the workplace that you don't necessarily, like, if you weren't in that situation, you wouldn't behave that way, but now it's how you, which is sad, right? Because I feel like I'm a strong person and I've got great values, but when that's your environment, you align with that because it's how you survive almost. And so, you know, for me it was work, for other people it could be other things, but that was definitely something that I was addicted to for a long time.
Well, I think that's just human behavior. Again, it's like groupthink, and there's many, I think, technical textbook names for it. But really, it's you get in a certain like fishbowl world, and everything around you that's crazy is normal, so that's your new normal. It's like you go from
but it's so not normal. Like I used to joke with my husband, like it's like Game of Thrones. It is.
I never watched it, but yes,
it's great. You should, that's one series where you
I only watch documentaries. Okay,
also good. So as I teach yoga, people are like, have you seen the new Bikram documentary? I'm like,
oh no, I was going to watch it.
Like, I don't know what's happening. I don't teach Bikram, but
yeah, that's a totally different
yoga format, by the way.
Yeah.
I love hot power fusion.
Don't write her letters.
That. No, but I what were we talking about? Total pivot on the
I don't know. I just had my thought around it. The group think and like the formal textbook, conversation. I mean, basically it's a slippery slope because you don't know what's going on until you're out of it.
Yes.
And that's what I was going to say. And I was going to ask you, like if Trevor or your kiddos or like your good friends pulled you out being like, what the F? Because I think it takes, again, really good people in your life to be really honest with you and be like, this is too much. Like I had my family be like, training, this environment, like you need to stop. This is crazy. And not like you need to stop, but like, are you happy?
Yeah. No, so for sure, Trevor, my husband, definitely we had that conversation. But the kicker is that in that space where you're successful, you're making money, you're getting accolades at work, like
you get reinforcement.
People are like, oh, you're doing so well, and you get reinforcement for the behavior. So no, it was like, I'm super unhappy here. I don't feel like I'm behaving in a way that really, I it's out of alignment with how I think we should be acting in the workplace.
Yeah.
And no, it had to be a very much a personal thing where I was like, this is not working for me. And it was a tough conversation with Trevor too, where it was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's not serving me. And it took a lot of conversations. I met with Jen. I had other conversations with other people, but I had to proactively seek that out because everywhere around me was like, you're doing so great. Why would you walk away from something you've worked so hard to accomplish? I had multiple people tell me, you're going to leave your job? Like you now?
They're Kool-Aid sippers.
I don't know if they're Kool-Aid sippers, but I think there's some glamour in success, right? There's some glamour in whatever, but if you're
if it looks good on Instagram, I get it.
Totally.
I mean, this is the business I'm in. I get it.
Yeah,
but I mean, just in general,
sure, like, oh, it looks great, but you feel like shit on the inside. That doesn't count. I mean,
not even just Instagram, like marketing and branding. Like, let's put this, semi-okay product in a really varsity packaging and sell it. And it looks really good. We've got the right people slinging it, so it's not that great. Everyone's talking about it, and everyone has it, so they've got it. Kylie Jenner's posting about it, this and that. Insert, Fire Festival. Like, it's the best thing. 3 months later, it didn't happen.
You get a cheese sandwich with a mattress.
Right? And you might die and or get robbed. Like, I don't know. Again, I think you have to really consciously pull back and like cling to your core values or take that note to find them out, and then keep good people around you that when it gets heavy, and you may or may not listen, because again, most of my like type A varsity humans, like present a challenge, they're gonna stick to it, they're gonna get it, and I have so much respect for that, and I identify with that, even if it kills us. And that type is usually a survivor, so you can withstand a lot. Like it takes a lot to like get into that break point of like breakdown, breakthrough, and it's like, what am I actually doing right now?
Right.
I'm miserable. This is costing me family time with my dogs, time with my family, whatever. And inserting like a pivot point there, like that's really, really hard.
It is. I mean, I didn't even know. I thought my core values were one thing until I really did some work to understand they were something else, because you're creating, everything that I was doing before is based on what I thought I should be doing, what I saw around me. So it is hard to pivot. And if you don't know what your true values are and you're comfortable with what those values are, then you're not going to make that leap. And it took a lot of work to get to that point to be able to say, I thought I cared about this. This is what I really care about. And that's okay.
Right.
And then, being able to walk away from something that doesn't serve you, it's super hard.
It is, and this is why I am passionate about like marketing and branding. It's not that again it's about these sale points or Rolexes or things you can buy or success. It's like the OG philosophy of like reality is nothing more than applied meaning. So because I've been fed this dream of do this, you will get this, and it doesn't matter how you actually feel. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what you got to do. And then you get a little bit older, and you're like, I'm genuinely unhappy.
Yeah.
And everything I was taught and supposed to be and want to do, I don't really want to do that. So what's that question? And I don't even blame anyone or anything. It's just like societies, our social norms, you know, what we grew up with. However, this is the positive side, I think, of social media, podcasts, these conversations where it's like our kiddos can hear this stuff and be like, oh, well, maybe I don't have to have this question at like 30. Right. Maybe it can be like 15 or earlier.
Yeah.
Like that's
I would say the darkest point for me in the last like decade was right after I got promoted.
Really?
The role that I wanted at my job.
Wow. And why was that?
I hit my goals, and then afterwards I was like, that's it. And then I thought, okay, so now I have to keep going. Like it felt like never enough.
Yeah.
I was never going to be enough. I always had to keep
like
moving forward. Yeah. And when I hit that point and I had all the things that I thought I wanted and that I thought I should accomplish, totally lost my sense of purpose. Yeah. It was like, now what? So that was hard. It was like I'm probably depressed.
Well, I think
I was just like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And I'm going to walk away from everything that I wasn't thinking that at the time, but I was like, this is it. This is it. I can't spend another decade here, you know, decade climbing the corporate ladder when
well, dude, then you're 90 and you look back, and if you know, let's say you made $10 million over 10 years. So each year you made $1 million, but those 10 years you were without like your kids and whatnot. And it sucks if you did spend those 10 years, but if you have all that money and you literally broke it down the dollar to the hour that was not with your family, it's like, is that really worth what it costs?
I think there's a point where, for me personally, it was like I needed to have that 15 years of work experience. That for me, I wasn't thinking about other things, and you know, that I needed that experience.
For you.
I needed that journey. I needed those lessons that I learned. But then I also needed to walk away when I realized this is no longer serving you, and you're no longer serving them. Like it's just not good on both sides. And I think that's a point where, for me, it took a year to get comfortable with that decision. And I know a lot of people who were in the same boat as I was, who don't walk away because they're afraid of what they're going to lose. They're afraid of what might happen to their quality of life, when in reality they might have the financial means, but they are miserable, you know, or they're using alcohol, other things to relieve stress that they don't even know that they have, because that's just how they operate. And we have friends where you're like, what just happened here? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. You're like, no,
actually, no,
just kidding. So I think it's really hard to make big changes when you've been doing something a certain way, and when society does tell you like, this is normal, this is how you should live your life, and to say, oof, you know, no, I can't do this. For me, it was a very personal, I know I can't continue on in this space. Making the leap was hard. I definitely, you know, God bless my husband, because it made that a little bit easier. We also were smart about it. We saved money. We had a plan in place. I wasn't just like, F it, I'm out. Well, there's matters too. Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think I understand, like, you're younger, you work maybe 24 hours, you don't have kiddos yet, or you can kind of just be like, you know, hooked to the game and play that way for a while, and do it responsibly, because we all gotta pay bills, and I understand that. And you also gotta service like your own self, like needs and competitive edge and whatnot. And I think that's that should be championed, that you took that time and you were like, this actually does matter to me, and I do want to reach these goals. And then when I get to the top, it's kind of like, oh. And like my comparative journey in that, like where I identify and relate to that, isn't probably work, I would want to say, because I still have goals, right?
But it would be like the team stuff. It's like, okay, well, we get to the pinnacle of something, and like, I mean, on all my fitness, like I wanted to win a D1 championship with lacrosse. I wanted to go to the games as an individual and be up there, and I'm so thankful it worked out as the team. But like you get to like the top, quote, and then you look back and you're like, okay, well, everything I really enjoyed of that was the journey, the training days, the, you know, matching outfits, or, you know, talking about like, we all have to eat this shit food. So I mean, I should have told you what the word today.
I know, right?
But like all the little things in between, and it kind of kicks back to where it's like, okay, I got to the end point, and if that's how it's going to be the end of my life, and all I really cared about was what I enjoyed was the journey pieces, and the piece of the pieces of the journey pieces that I enjoyed were like family time or this, and like when I'm going to work, I have anxiety, or when to train, I have anxiety, I don't want to be there. Your body, your mind, everything's telling you something. We're resilient to work through that for so long until you can't anymore. But when you're constantly in that environment or drinking in, you know, marketing messages or cultural messages or the 5 people around you messages, this is what's real. This is what you get championed on. You've got bulimia and everyone's telling you how great you look skinny. It's like, you're going to keep up these behaviors until you can really like jump into that tidal wave and like put up a stand.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. And I think it's pretty great actually, you have the self-awareness to say, I enjoyed the journey in the corporate space. Well, I mean, the reflection, it is so much about how we do. Results oriented. Like the journey does not matter as long as you get the outcome. And so I think that's where it gets really messy for people who are in a corporate setting in particular. That
this is like, pro sports. I mean, I didn't get to level where we were gonna get paid, but no, it's you either win or lose. Anything else together does not matter. So no, I get it.
Yeah, if you're a shitty person on the side, but you're getting the outcomes that are desired, then cool. You know, and I think that's the hard part. And I think we're bringing more of that, more consciousness into everything we do. More mindfulness is really critical for the success of businesses in the future and for the success of humans just on an individual level, because that's really missing. And I think that is very much glamorized in our society today, where it's like you see the Kylie Jenners, you see the athletes, and then behind the scenes you're like, what the hell? But it doesn't matter because they've got the things that we covet, you know? So, and that leads to a lot of people being like, well, my process is super shitty and my outcomes are super shitty, so therefore I suck. And you've got people who, you know, comparison is the thief of joy, but it is also, it's a motivator if you use it in the right way, but it's a slippery slope.
Again, and I think that's just like alcohol. Like, it's such a balanced piece, and it stems back to like mindfulness of yourself. Because some people can have, you know, 10 drinks and then not drink, or like maybe a drink once a day, and it's not a big deal. It's all like relative to you and your world. And having that kickback of like, where am I at? What am I really doing? Is this being glamorized? Am I doing this because I saw this in a music video, or I'm just doing it to unwind? And it's that conversation with yourself and that self-awareness. And I will say, I don't think that journey and that process should ever really end. Like, it continues as you get older, maybe even more so, because we are, you know, exposed to more things, although our kiddos are exposed to a lot through, you know, digital stuff. But as adults, we do get locked into our little worlds, and you kind of get set into a routine, and then you're kind of exposed to things on like a whim, I want to say. Like, I started yoga. I take Jessica's class. It's wonderful. And, you know, if I'm new to it, I'm like, okay, well, what mat should I buy? Or like, when do I sign up? Or what class should I, like, you're so naive to some things. You just kind of go with like the influencer that's around you. So it's just these constant check-in points of like, how does this make me feel? Do I really want to be doing this? And what are the repercussions of partaking in this?
Yeah, it's like knowledge is power, but awareness is a superpower.
Yes.
Like, you can know things, but that whole like awareness and being present and mindful is just even next level compared to just knowing, right? It's doing as well.
So now that like you've kind of gone through the swing, new businesses out, what is your balance like now? Like, what's the conversation around party, play, and work?
It's actually way better.
Okay.
Yeah, way better. I didn't realize how off balance I was when I was in the space that I was before, because I think that was everyone, right? Like, everyone around me was in the same boat. It took me a good 3 months I took the summer off, kind of reset everything, remembered what it was like to feel relaxed. That's our natural state. And I was very unfamiliar with that and didn't realize it until I went through that process. But now, having balance means I'm not giving up my time to things that don't align with my values. And so before, like physical fitness, I got this M3 framework that I'm working on, movement, meditation, mindset, right? And before, when I was committed to my professional development at my career, I was spending most of my time working, which means I was spending less time exercising or meditating or whatever it was. Those were the first things that would go. I would immediately, you know, if I had very limited time, drop the kids off, go to work, whatever, that's what I would prioritize. And it's been actually kind of a struggle to get to that point where I'm okay with I'm not going to say lack of progress, but the pace of how quickly my business is moving forward, because I'm no longer willing to give up those things that serve me in the ways that I need to be served. So,
dude, that's huge progress.
Exercise. Oh, that's for sure.
Huge.
I yoga, running, taking care of myself through eating nourishing foods, meditation, all those things. I prioritize those, and I do them, versus being like, well, shit, I have to get other stuff done, and like going to work. And then,
long term, that's so important.
I know. And then, and the stress. So I feel less stressed because I'm in more control of my schedule. And therefore, instead of relieving stress by having drinks, I can just read a book without it, right? Like I can do those things without needing alcohol to sort of numb the stress and kind of come down. Because before, it was like, I almost needed it to like stop the thinking. Like, I was gonna have a glass of wine. What's up, girlfriend?
That's my dog. Fine.
And then, and now it's like, I went on a vacation, did not drink at all. And it was like the first vacation, this past summer to Florida. And I was like, I don't even need alcohol to relax because I'm already relaxed.
Yeah.
So yeah, much better.
I actually feel like that's a pretty fast transition. Going from like high paced spin to like fully calm.
Well,
it's still hard for me to be calm at times.
I didn't do it alone.
Okay.
I had weekly coaching from like a life coach, entrepreneurial coach.
Good for you.
Yeah, no, it takes talking it out, honestly.
Yeah. Well, again, this is
all
all new.
PTSD from being in that space.
You have to withdraw.
You had to withdraw, and you had to talk about what you're feeling. And it was crazy because things would come out in the conversations I had with my coach that were related to me kind of reducing stress. I even went back to things like my childhood and blah, blah, blah.
It all adds up.
Leaving my job, I started thinking about my dad. Like my dad died when I was in high school.
Yeah.
When we were in high school. And I was like, how is this even related and where would this thought come from? But like weird stuff came out that when you're in that go, 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 you're not, I don't know, there's a connection there, but who knows?
I think
it's the unwinding is a process and it requires a little help, I think.
Do you think even staying busy, and this is kind of like something I've unpacked, like staying busy kind of numbs you out from like addressing anything else? Not
100%.
Yeah, so then like 100%. I didn't even really know there was shit that I didn't like or didn't care about as I unpacked stuff. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't know that was a thing, but now that we're here, you guys let that clock run.
That's why I love that you're doing yoga too, because it's such a great way to physical exercise. But also like you get those.
There's mindset, there's
energy,
physical,
and the mindset. For sure.
It's any which way you spin it. It's all connected, and if you don't deal with your shit, everybody has shit.
Is real.
Yeah, then you don't. It's always there. So the earlier you can deal with it, there's no stigma, or even if there is, who cares? Deal with it early, or at least have plant the seed, acknowledge it, and as you grow, like just carve some space to like get back, check in with yourself, even casually, and then when you can get formal, afford to, time and energy and budget, so be it. But the irony, kind of to like what you were just saying is, and this is where it's so hard for what I do.
All distractions. What are you distracting yourself
Well, it's all distractions, and so in a society where we're keeping up with the Joneses or the Kardashians or whatever, and we're drinking marketing and branding, or you're in an environment where it's constantly consuming your thinking and shaping your reality, it's hard for us to not only break through, question a better way, and then pivot, but understand that your decisions when you choose to eat better and sleep, and then you show up to your yoga class, which is an influential position, whether you know it or not, and you can like present a mindful, quote or two or playlist, and then have like an intro and outro that's super like impacting, like that changes those 7 people's that you just coached, or 12 or whatever, or 50 the day immensely. And that's not immeasurable, like human wise or business wise. And this is what's so hard with me, where I'm like, no, we need to get good humans doing good things. I'm like, well, how do we measure it? I'm like, I don't know, but I've seen it, it works, and it matters because I've experienced it, and this is a thing, and I know long term it will become a thing, but old school business doesn't get it. And it's not about the business, it's about society, but where are the messages coming through? Business. So it's like, I champion those pivots and those decisions that seem little, but you taking care of yourself and then putting yourself in front of an audience, whether it's social media, coaching, teaching, being a mom, showing up at a PTO meeting, are huge, because you're presenting those messages to the rest of the world around you, even if it's 5 or 6 people. And more than likely, if it's a yoga class or PTO, those are 5 or 6 of your leaders.
Podcast, right? Like you're creating space to be vulnerable, honest, authentic, and then people can connect to that message. Because no, absolutely. No, I love listening, because your interview style for one is very much like, let's just have a conversation, which is great.
Because it literally is.
Because it literally is. But I think we need more of that versus. I tried to enter into the Instagram, like create a profile for myself, but every part of it, I'm like, I don't know if this feels authentic, because it's pictures of me that are beautiful, but
and that's okay.
Like manufactured, which is totally okay. I think what people are craving is a little bit more messiness, right? A little bit more like, you're great, realness. But you also are real, and you have, the same trials, tribulations that I have versus everything. Even if the message is super strong, on a social media perspective, even if it's a great uplifting, we need that vulnerability. We need that messiness to connect. Otherwise it just feels like, well, what am I not doing right or wrong to, you know, have that? And life is way more messy, way more complex than just pictures and words. Like it's, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That is just the name, right? Like,
you gotta have to like do these leaps, and sometimes it doesn't always work out. A lot of times it doesn't. But if you look at like the 10,000 foot view of just society itself, we came from this super, you know, American conservative space, Leave It to Beaver, and then there's like, you can see patterns like revolution, there's like the 60s, and then the 70s are like super hippie, and we're like against all this stuff, and
nobody can drink alcohol, and then shit got crazy.
Yeah, here.
Like, God bless. You know, let's go do all the weirdest things ever. And
again, too many boundaries.
Right. Yeah, you need to have moderation, but we get, I think as a culture too, we get so down on ourselves where we think we have to cut it off or not. It's very black and white, and that is just not how life is. Life is super gray area, and getting comfortable with that, I think that's like the next opportunity for our generation, for our younger generation, is to recognize like it's not this cookie cutter linear approach. There's a lot of pivots, a lot of kind of going on.
Well, don't let that like snowball to a bigger problem when you could just nipped a smaller problem in the ass, and now we're like all the way to, you know, I don't want to be here anymore, and it's just like, well, actually just get out of the environment you're in because it's toxic and you hate it. It doesn't it's not what you want to be doing anyways. And you know, where the reason I wanted to do this cast and I was so pumped about it was because, you know, Jessica and I, we love to have fun. We'll out there, you know, I love to dance party. If you ever can't find me, just check the dance party. There's nobody there.
Usually by yourself.
Yep, it's super weird, but it's just Whitney Houston and I. I love the fun. I love the party. And then I'm hungover. I'm like, ugh, not today. Bad decisions. But that balance is huge. And I think this conversation is important, not necessarily to have a solution for anyone. I just encourage everybody, if it's something's on your mind and you want to talk about it, or you're like, excuse me, how did you navigate this? It may or may not be a big deal. Talk about it. And it's, because when Jessica, we started talking, she was like, oh, thank God you feel so. I was like, dude, me too. I'm glad you're like kind of in this boat. Like, does it have to be either or? Like, should we not be doing this because we are wellness and fitness and we've got all this stuff to do? We're launching businesses further. What is the balance? I think the basic takeaway is talk to the people that you trust and that you respect, and 9 times out of 10, I think, even if they're like grade A game, rocket science, whatever, there's going to be some human piece that's like, you know what, I actually hear you, and I was kind of wondering that myself. And that space in itself, just like, no, you're not alone in this conversation. Let's freaking talk about it.
This is all normal. That was a day after we went out.
True. In yoga, let it be known.
After yoga class, I was like, what happened? Not that we didn't know what happened, but it was like, whoa, things turned up. And
it was fine. I was like, what's going on in suburbia? Let it be known.
But I think though, recognizing that does happen and not having shame or guilt or whatever around it is. Oh, it was great. But it was also like, whoa.
We're back in high school.
Whoa. But it does happen, and it's okay, and not, you know, being like, well, I did this, therefore I am never going to kind of get to where I want to be. It's just so not true. And I think creating space for that conversation is really healthy. And I think that's why we wanted to get together and just talk about how, you know, everything fits together, and that just because you have things that happen, you know, it doesn't mean that dictates how things are going to happen in the future. And funny enough, I was listening to another podcast today, and there was this woman who was talking about Maya Angelou and how, I think she was working for the Clinton administration, or she was like the poet laureate or something like that. And she told this story where, you know, Maya Angelou, very respected, went to this event and was like blackout drunk and was hitting on men.
I've watched all the documentaries.
And I'm like, I am so grateful for this in this moment because of the conversation we were going to have today, where it's like you can be the things and still be human and have those slip-ups and still be all the things.
Dude, Turmeric and Tequila, that was all the
normal,
sides.
Right? And like, ideally we get to a place where the swings are less dramatic, where it's less polarizing, and we can find that midpoint. But man, that journey is so real for everyone, where saying, you know, even this woman who is so revered or revered or whatever the hell the word is, she still had that shit happen to her too. I'm like, God bless.
You love her more. Like, that's even better. But I think it's, first of all, I think my creatives always turn up. My security's here. And I watched through it. So Nina Simone, Dr. Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou, they all used to get together and have like parties, like civil rights. I'm like, could you imagine those conversations in those rooms? And it's like, you're having drinks, you're having fun, but it's like passion and fiery personalities and like truly statement makes, like, we're gonna like die for this cause. I mean, that's like, it gives me the chills thinking like that. The room of that is incredible.
Yeah.
My parties are working on getting that important. But it's remarkable. It's my computer screen. And I think again, you can see somebody that's this powerful and this influential and this impactful, and then she turns up. It's like, oh my God, you're also a human.
You're also a human.
That makes her message
That
much
is
more
the
impactful.
beauty, though, and that's why I think some of the dangers of social media are, because
Yeah.
you see all the beauty, like air quotes here,
Yeah.
but behind the scenes you're like, oh my.
Yeah.
But then let's talk about that behind the scenes, because that's the real stuff. And if there's more awareness of that, then everyone again, awareness is a superpower. Then you can start to make the changes you want to feel good in yourself, because not everybody's going to feel great getting turned up,
Yeah.
but not everybody's going to feel terrible too if they do that as well. So how do you just normalize it for yourself and recognize what you're okay with, and then if you feel any sort of shame, guilt, whatever around it, make the right choices to be mindful so you don't do it in the future, which I think for me personally has been the hardest lesson, because things like alcohol, the second you have more than one drink, you're like, oh, all those things I thought before, who cares? Getting turned up is super fun. Let's go have a party. Let's go dance party on a Wednesday by ourselves.
That was me, yeah. Well, but again, I think these check-in points are universe prescribed. We're like, okay, well, let's check this in. I think they're good almost, because if you kind of stay in this like Manila zone where everything's okay all the time, it's like, okay, we keep a pulse. Like, are you like testing things at all? Like, I do think you need to be out there on the limit, kind of, forging ground. You don't need to be like in jail or like picked up off the street, but like, I think it's got to kind of like pushing, and then you come back, and like pushing and you come back. Like, I think that's actually a really healthy way to be. Versus trying to just live within these boundaries all the time. That's
also not healthy. That's not healthy. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
and you're not being yourself. And I think that in yourself will drive you to drink or do whatever you do, whatever your outlet is,
or even drive you to do things and then keep it a secret, which creates a whole other like host of issues. You're like, I'm fine. You're like, ooh.
And now you have liver cancer because you're angry.
Oh yeah, shit, things will show up in other places.
Yes.
Gotta get through that shit.
So reach out to your friends. Be aware of your check-in points. I would say, if anyone, a major factor for me of being like, okay, let's just dial in life in general, whether it's going to bed on time, having a few drinks versus like 10. Yeah. Dance party, you cut that off by 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Is being
drinking.
Right. Oh, also true. Is having something like something accountability. Now that I'm training less, it's been easier to party more, which I'm down with for a time being. But now that I'm getting back to training, I'm like, okay, we feel like shit. So if you're kind of trying to navigate that switch over, instead of like super policing yourself, I would encourage like sign up for a marathon or start training classes or do something. This isn't me telling you, go show up, do your workout. When you feel like shit, you'll be like, I'm gonna eat better a little bit. I'm gonna do this, and that's a process, but it will incentivize you greatly.
For sure, 100% agree.
Outside of that, I don't know. I'm just trying to think for me personally. I'm no doctor and or nutritionist, but little pieces that I'm dialing back in are certainly like deliverables, schedule, work with imbalance, training, and then also, ironically, not having hard like boundaries. And this is my personality, so everyone needs to seek their own. But it's like I have a bowl of candy. I mean, I'm not really a candy person anyways, but if it sits out and it's there and I'm like, eat if I want, I never eat it.
Same.
So get to know yourself and know like kind of what pushes you either. And this could be alcohol, it could be food, it could be love, sex, whatever. Like, find those things that resonate with you, and then see which way works for your brain. Like, if you take everything away, are you really good with restriction, or are you really good with everything being free, and then you monitor yourself?
Right. Yeah. I think that's such a great call out, Kristen, because for me as well, if I tell myself no, then I'm like, I want it even more.
Yeah.
But if it's there, I'm like, you can have it.
Right.
I'm like, I don't really care. So it's almost like, I don't know what that stems from, but I'm in the same boat as you. I do think for some people that abstain piece is really important.
Completely agree.
But I also think that, there are a lot of people who could just be more mindful about what they're doing, but that's so hard, So if you can't be mindful about, okay, I can have it, but then not the entire bowl of candy, then you probably shouldn't have it in your view.
Completely agree.
If you can say I can have it and then you don't want it, you got to figure out your own stuff. But it is such a real situation for anything.
Well, and that conversation can negate a lot though too. If you can kind of dial in which way you work there, that can make it a lot easier versus like, because then you just like punish yourself. Like you're mad if yourself, you indulge, or
and if you're not going to change your behavior, then that leads to a whole other host of issues.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, wanting to change is also a major piece. I really want to touch on really quick and we'll wrap up, but you know, you had people in your life that were no longer drinking, and I thought this was a really relevant piece to talk about where you said person doesn't want to drink anymore, so they were kind of okay going to parties, but everybody around them was really weird.
Yeah.
So what do you think is like a good way for people, the drinkers, to be around non-drinkers? Like, is it to be like, are you down with us drinking, or conversate around it, or not be weird? Like, what's a good way to navigate that?
So I think what makes it, from the conversation I had with the person in my life who stopped drinking, what made it more awkward for them was when people were delicate around the conversation, but would still consume alcohol, you know, in front of them. Just don't make it an issue. Don't make it a big deal for them. Don't make it a big deal for you. You do you, they'll do them. And that's what made this, you know, this person in my life feel, you know, weird about their choice to not drink, was because people are like, oh, I think I might have something for you to drink. I think you know, making it weird. Just don't. Like, let them do them, and you do you, and that'll make it a lot better. Because they're still going through something too, like making the decision to not drink, whether it is because of an addiction or because of a health reason or whatever it is.
Pregnancy,
that's a, you know, pregnancy, whatever. Like, if they just don't make it an issue, because then it becomes an issue with that awkwardness around the topic. So Trevor and I were vegans for a little while.
I was just gonna say, this is the same vegan conversation.
Vegetarians.
And
this was 15 years ago as well.
Okay.
I read that Skinny Bitch, whatever that book was, and I was like, oh, eating
with
animals is
the housewife girl.
No, she does that Skinny Bitch strength calories. I read a book where it was like all the animal rights and health. And
stuff.
Well,
I'm eating less meat because of that whole animal conversation. And then
there's a lot of great documentaries. You get a lot of protein out of, you know, leafy greens.
Yep.
But when we did that, it was before it was very, you know, there wasn't a ton of products out there where you could get alternatives to meat and dairy. And so my family was like, how's your diet? How's your diet? I'm like, this is a way of life. Now, I eat meat now because I don't know what happened. I just sort of evolved. But in the moment, it was like, okay, stop talking about this. I can eat, I can pick around the food, I can bring my own food, I can do whatever. You're making it weird, which makes me feel weird. And it actually kind of chipped away at my resolve, to be totally honest, where I was like, oh man, I should probably just eat meat.
But again, that environment, it's the same conversation.
Yeah. So and alcohol, like, it's just easier to drink. When, if you have a problem, maybe it is in the moment, but then you're, you know, for people who, like, I have another person in my life, just saying yes is a really bad choice for that person.
Well, and I think there's two levels there, when it's like someone chooses not to have in their life, and then others are like, I think they genuinely need support, and like, we're all not going to drink, or we're not going to keep it around them. I think there's levels of that combo.
There's situations where you got to be respectful.
I'd even say that with food or dairy or veganism or like eating disorder, like all the things you know when you need to really be sensitive once it's crossed the line of like we're actually into like a disorder or an addiction or something on the next level versus like a choice to abstain. But either way, I think both of those are conversations. And whether you need the support of yourself.
For sure, I agree with you. I will say though, if my family hadn't treated it like a big deal and we're just like, all right, you know, whatever, it would have made it a lot easier.
I believe that.
But I think that applies to once that person's made that decision on their own. If somebody needs support in something, that's a totally different conversation. You're like, I see you might need a little help. That requires an intervention. So.
Well, and I would challenge anyone that's like, because again, anything out of status quo, and even again, when you're aware, we've done the work, blah, 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 we still have work to do. Even when you're aware and you're in this zone, we still have our like unconscious, like status quo bias. So I would challenge anyone to, again, keep that awareness, keep kind of like that self check-in of like, oh, you're a vegan, cool, what? Well, I guess I get 2 burgers now because you don't have, like, instead of having that whole commentary being like, oh, wow, okay, wait, am I judging? Do I think it's weird because I don't do it? Do I think it's weird because society says this is weird? Or do I actually even think it's weird at all? Like those little, like,
or
that
do you
little
feel guilty
internal
because that person's doing something where you're like, maybe I should do more
Right.
of that.
Yeah.
In yoga, we talk about keep your eyes on your mat. Like, don't worry about what's happening around you. There's nothing you can physically do to get to a point where somebody else is at in that moment for a lot of different reasons. So just keep your eyes on your mat.
Why I do that literally in your class? Because I'm dying and I have to.
I keep my eyes on your mat. I'm like, punch your toes forward.
You're like, you're doing a pose that isn't a thing. That's
you're like, yeah,
sleeping right over roadkill. Are you live?
And there's no winning in yoga. That's the best part.
Yeah, I love it.
Non-competitive physical activity.
It's way chill. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking time.
Yeah.
It's New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year's Eve,
I
everybody.
sincerely
Be safe out
appreciate
there.
it. Yes, don't drink and drive. Don't think and drive. Keep your boots strapped tight. I think the baseline of this conversation is like keep in touch with your community, and if there's something to conversate about, talk about it. If something does or doesn't feel right, talk about it, and be kind to yourself. Like we can all have these
everything is normal.
Yeah, break down and
Everything
get
is
back.
absolutely normal, and no shame in our game.
And if
Talk
you're
about
really
it.
good at partying, holla. Just kidding. But stay safe out there. We'll check back in. Please, Jessica, give us the quick 411 on where we find you, your businesses, where you at.
My business is www.apogy.biz, apogee.biz. If you want some professional development, I'm going to launch our first course in the first quarter of 2020. Also going to get into the conscious leadership, conscious company space. So I'll bring that M3 movement meditation mindset framework to that. If you want a little bit of inspiration, I'm tapping into Instagram. It's I'm also getting in love with it, but it's a slow process. Jess Crow _M3. My platform really that I'm leveraging is LinkedIn. Jessica Crow. I think I was like one of the early adopters. So
I was gonna say that's
first
great.
name,
You
last
have that.
name, yeah.
Okay.
So connect with me there. Would love to connect. Yeah.
Check Jessica out and her class. Do you want to say where it's at?
Oh yeah, I teach at a Core Power in Stapleton, Monday nights at 7:15, noon on Wednesdays. There's some amazing teachers there. Actually, go to any yoga studio. There's going to be some great teachers, but come check me out. Would love to have you in class and take class with you. I'm always there.
Checking all the boxes on the business front, on the mindful front, on the fitness front. I'm here for it. On the party front. No, I genuinely appreciate the eclectic mix of you being a human being.
Right back, I used to start. You're in the same boat.
We out here.
Yeah.
It's good. And this podcast is 5 minutes old, so there's no always yet. But I love to check back in and see where it's at, specifically when like new businesses are starting, pivot point in life. And then maybe we'll have a conversation. And for all my young people that might be listening, we're a little bit older. I know that we're still having these conversations, so be kind to yourself when you're young.
Yeah.
But really, when you're a kiddo, man, we've done a lot of time and energy and into figuring stuff out, and again, the breakdown, breakthrough, what have you.
You're in survival mode for most of the first half of your life, and then you finally kind of figure it out, and then you are less in that space, and you've got more room in your mind to think about these topics.
Yeah. Are we hypothetically halfway there?
Oh my God, I hope.
I feel like I should have more figured out, so even on that note, not to completely take everything I just said.
Still working through it.
Yes. All right, anyways, check Jessica out. I'll post all of your information. I appreciate you. Happy New Year.
Happy
Here
New
comes
Year.
2020.
Best year yet.
This will be in
decade
2020
yet.
when I get up there, so yay 2020, we're in here. Appreciate you. Cheers.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.